The President, please be seated. The trial chamber is back in session, and next we will continue to hear witness 2 TCW 964. Court officer is instructed to bring the witness to the witness stand in the courtroom. The President, good morning, witness. What is your name? The witness, please hold on until the microphone is activated. So before you respond, you should wait until the red light is on your microphone so that other people, including the interpretation, could hear. And we will operate on this arrangement because your testimony will be interpreted into English and French also. So could you hold on a few seconds before you respond after the question posed to you? So we cannot activate immediately after the question is finished. So please remind that you look at the microphone. Witness, what is your name? Response: my name is Keo Chandra alias Yao. Question: what is your date of birth? Do you remember it? Response: I remember that I was born in 1942. President, thank you. And where is your birthplace? Response: I was born in Mahasena village, Tapem commune, Tramkok, district Takeo province. Question: what is your current address? Witness: my present residence was the same as I told you earlier. President, thank you. What is your occupation now? Response: I am now a retiree from a policeman from the Ministry of Interior What is your parents' name? My father is Sokti, deceased, and my mother, Keo Chan Tian, also deceased. What is your wife's name and how many children do you have? Response. My wife is Kao Sakon. I have 7 children, 2 of them deceased. President, thank you. Mr. Keo Chandra, based on the report of the Crivier this morning, to your knowledge, you have no relative by blood or by law were admitted to a civil party in case 002. Is this correct? Respond, yes, this is correct, Mr. President. President, thank you. And you have taken an oath before you enter into the courtroom. Is this correct? Witness, yes, I took an oath before the iron statue in this court. President, thank you. Now, the Chamber wishes to inform you the right and obligation as a witness. As a witness in this proceeding, you may refuse to any question or any request to make assertion that may incriminate you. This is the right against self-incrimination. And as a witness, you have a duty to give testimony in these proceedings. And you have to answer to questions posed by the parties or any judge from the bench, except the question or any assertion request that may incriminate you, as I told you earlier. As a witness, you should respond to the best of your knowledge, the truth of events you have heard, you experienced, you observed, personally, any incident in relation to the questions posed by the parties or by the judges from the bench. Mr. Keo Chandra, have you given any testimony or any interview to the investigator from the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges? If so, how many interviews you gave and where are the places you gave interview? Response, yes. I gave several interviews, but I do not remember the date, at least 5 or 6 interviews, especially the interview on the crimes or on the event happened during DK regime. President, thank you. And before you enter the courtroom, have you read your statements that you gave to the interview, at the interview to the investigators to refresh your memory? Response, because I have given several interviews, I remember some, but I may forget some of the contents. Mr. President, have you read those statements before you enter into this courtroom? Question, yes, I did, but there was one question which was handwritten. I could not read very well. I failed to read and understand that content. President, to your memory and your knowledge, those statements and the contents are correct to that of the statements you gave to the interviews in several occasions earlier? Response: yes, some are correct, others are not correct. Because in certain question saying that my father is Cao Chantiyan, in fact my father is Sok Ki. There was some small error in that statements, but I can correct during my testimony here before the chamber. President, thank you, Mr. Witness. And to begin with the examination of this witness, under Rule 91B, the chamber will hand the floor to the co-prosecutor to put question to this witness, and the co-prosecutor and the lead co-lawyers will have half day for questioning this question, and you will have time from now to the lunch break and also in the afternoon. Now, the floor is yours, Mr. Co-Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to Mr. President, Your Honors, and everyone in and around the courtroom. Good morning to you, Mr. Kao Chandra. Today, I'm going to be asking you a number of questions about events that happened a long time ago. And of course, you should answer to the best of your memory. But if there's something that you don't remember, please tell us that you don't remember and don't try to guess. Also, if any of my questions are confusing or unclear, please tell me and I will ask the question in a different way. I'd like to start by asking you about events in 1970. In your OCIJ interview D25/24, you state that in 1970 you joined the maquis in the forest as a doctor with a person named Jun Jun. Could you tell us who Jun Jun was, how you were introduced to the revolution, and what you did after you joined the maquis?
Response: the reason why I joined the movement in the maquis because the former King Norodom Sihanouk appealed from Paris. If any Cambodian who loved him, he or she should join the maquis to liberate the country and to help the prince. And then I called my friends to join the movement and went to the jungle. But before doing that, I went to my district, to Tram Kok, to meet with my parents.
In interview E3/5153 at page number 0017-2043 in Khmer, 0020-5088 in English, and 0020. Okay. The ERN in Khmer is 0017-2043. English 0020-5088. And French 0020-5093. In that interview, you state that you were in Kabal Or village in Tram Kok district from 1970 to 71, and that from 72 to 74 you were assigned to work at Hospital 22 in Tram Kok. During that period, did you get to know any of the Khmer Rouge leaders from Tram Kok district? And if so, whom did you get to know?
Response: when I first arrived, the Khmer Rouge leaders, of course I didn't know anyone, but And I was instructed to give up and to forget everything from the old society because I was belong to the capitalists. And later, I was told that I was a student, a doctor. So I have to give up to forget everything to build myself as a revolutionary.
I'd like to ask you about Tamok in particular. You state in OCIJ interview E3/5153 that you and he met frequently and that he knew your mother. Could you tell us a little bit about how your mother knew Tamok and when it was that you met Tamok frequently?
Respond, yes. Tamok, who knew my mother when he was a monk, he was one of the students who studied Buddhism in the Pali High School at Mahamantra Pagoda. So his house was 8 kilometers from my house. We would travel on bicycle, and Tamok would came over to my house for lunch at my mother's house, and they are good friends. When I left Phnom Penh to my house in my village, the messengers of the Khmer Rouge took me from my house on the same day. I did not have enough time to talk to my parents. I was taken to Damnak Snul village. But before I arrived, I was sent to Tulpchak village. I spent there for about 2 hours. Another messenger took me from Tulpchak to Damnak Snul village. At each place, the messenger would assign from one place, and then the messenger would take me to another place. So they did not assign one messenger to send us all the way from the first place to the third, for example. So, and later I was sent to the sector hospital. It was not belong to the zone sector. And those who knew me because I was a doctor, they came to see me for treatment during the Sangkum Niyum. I'm sorry, I will speak some French because it is difficult for me to speak in Khmer. It was in Fondation Calmet. I was working in the emergency...
interrupting you. I apologize for interrupting you. I'd like to ask you to try to focus specifically on my questions. I know we have a lot of material to go through and you have a lot to tell us, but it will be more helpful if we can deal with it in sort of a step-by-step way. Is that okay? Thank you for that. You mentioned just a moment ago that Tamok would have lunch at your mother's house. Can you estimate how many times or how often Tamok had lunch at your mother's house?
Witness, I did not take note, but many times. Sometime when I was studying at Phnom Penh, I don't know. Especially when he would visit my mother's home. But I heard from my mother that Tamok would come to have lunch at her house, and his name when he was a monk was called Acha Ung Chuen. and his family name was Ung. When he visited my house in my village, I was a student at the Faculty of Medicine in Phnom Penh.
Thank you. Thank you. I would now like to turn to the topic of your arrest. Can you tell us about the circumstances or events that led to your arrest in 1973 or 1974?
Response. In 1973 or 1974, I was not arrested yet because I was just deprived of certain rights because they said that I belong to the Sihanoukist movement, and because there was an appeal for them to join the movement, resistance movement rather. President witness, it appeared that you look at a document for responding, so the chamber advised you that you will listen only to the question and respond. You cannot have a look at any document to give response.
So when you were arrested, were you ever told the reason for your arrest, or did you ever learn the reason why you were arrested?
Response. When I was taken to the detention center, it was in 1975. This is a small mistake to say 1973. I was there until end of February, until April of that year, until March of that year. Until April 1975. So the total of my detention duration was 29 days in Krang Tachan.
And do you know why you were arrested? Do you know the reason for your arrest?
Response. At the beginning, I was not told that I was under arrest. They simply came and told me that the upper Angka would like you to collect all documents and medical equipment so that you can go and instruct people at the upper echelon, especially to teach medical skill to other people. However, when I went to the place, to the first place, the second and the third, it was rather late at night. I was ending up at Krang Tachan. When I was there, Krang Tachan Detention Center, I was told that it was the re-education center. I was not told that it was Krang Tachan, but at that place, I passed the gate, and when I passed the building, and then they shut down the door, and then I realized that It was a detention building. I was surprised. I was shocked. I saw many prisoners in that building, and in the morning of that day, there were more than 40 prisoners, about 45 or so, and women were also there. They were shackled to their ankles.
I'd actually like to go slightly back in time, before your arrival at Krang Taichan. In your interview D25/24 at page number 00163457 in Khmer, 00223452 in English, and 00178091 in French, you stated, and I quote, "They interrogated me at Krabai Prai for 5 days before they took me to Krang Taichen," end quote. Could you tell us briefly where Krabai Prai was located and describe the place where you were interrogated there?
Krabai Prai office was about more than 10 kilometers from my house, and from that location to Krang Tachan, it was roughly about 10 kilometers. I was taken to Krabai Prai, and they only questioned me whether I received any training from CIA or KGB, and from whom did I receive that kind of training.
And who was it who interrogated you at Krabai Prai?
It was not those people at the Krabai Prai office. But when I later on arrived at Krang Tachan, I saw the same individual, that is Tachen.
So are you saying that you saw Tachen at Krabai Prai as well as at Krang Tachen?
Probably at that time, Ajahn Chen came to question me in person at Krabai Prai, and later on he had left to Krang Tachan. And 5 days later, I was taken to Krang Tachan. And I didn't know at the time that Krang Tachan was a prison only after I was pushed in and the fence closed. And when I felt the barbed wires along the fence, then I realized it was a prison. People who were to be killed, then they would have been killed immediately at Krabai Prai without having to take them to Krang Tachan. And for those who were to be interrogated in order to find those people who were implicated, then they would be sent to Krang Tachan for the interrogation.
Just one more question about your time at Krabai Prai before we move on to Krang Tachan. In the same section of interview D25/24, discussing your interrogation at Krabai Prai, you said they asked you, quote, "how much I hated the revolution and which individuals I hated," unquote. Did they tell you why they thought you hated the revolution?
I didn't dare ask them. However, at that time, I recall that whenever I came to visit my native village, the village chief, that is the Khmer Rouge village chief, usually would ask me to go along for fishing, and sometimes I was busy, so I refused. I gave them the fishing net and a rifle for shooting birds. And maybe because they didn't know how to use that kind of gun, then they reported to their relevant people about me. And I believe the question that I was asked, it could be from the reporter from Kolrum, Kolso, who were former village chiefs and who actually died later on.
So now moving on to your time at Krang Taichan, my first question is, do you know who it was that decided that you should be sent from Krabai Prai to Krang Taichan?
I only thought that there had to be an order from the upper echelon to transfer me from Krabai Prai to Krang Taichan in order to question me more. That's why I was sent to Krang Taichan. President, witness, you are reminded that in your response, please don't make any assumption. You only respond from what you have heard, have experienced, or have witnessed or observed or seen, and not to make any assumption. And that would assist us in ascertaining the truth. Thank you.
So turning now to your arrival at Krang Taichan, when you arrived at Krang Taichan, what types of people were detained there with you? Who were the other prisoners?
Those who were detained in a long row. And in Krang Taichan, that was the difficult condition. They used a wooden plank underneath their ankles. The president interrupts. Mr. Witness, you are reminded to respond correctly and directly to the question and not to make any indirect response. And Mr. Deputy Co-Prosecutor, please ask the question again.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, my question was, who were the groups of people who were there with you? What kind of people were detained at Krang Taichan, the other prisoners?
By that time, I did not know what types of people they were. I didn't know their background, nor where they came from.
I'd like to read a quote to you from one of your interviews and ask you whether you remember this information or not. The interview is D2524. The page number in English is 00223455. In French, it's 00178093. And in Khmer, it is 00163460. And this is what was said in the interview. Question: where did the prisoners come from? Answer: Lon Nol soldiers, Pol Pot cadres. I met the chairman of the military recruiting office. The Lon Nol soldiers were taken to Prai Kaduit. cadres whom they accused of being traitors, end quote. Are you able to remember that information today?
Yes, I do. Those people who were sent to Ocontoot, they were not only former soldiers. In fact, they were people who were involved in the battlefield, but after the regime failed, they were gathered. But at Krang Tachan office, there was a mixture of everything, not only cadres or soldiers. And I only learned that information from the prisoners themselves when we talked in the prison.
So just to be clear, it was the Lon Nol soldiers themselves who told you that they were Lon Nol soldiers. Is that correct?
Besides those who lived in my nearby villages, they would not tell me whether they were former Lon Nol soldiers or teachers. And only those whom we knew at the nearby villages, then they would tell me.
In the quote that I just read, you said the Lon Nol soldiers were taken to Prai Kaduat. Can you tell us what was located at Prai Kaduat, and how did you become aware that the Lon Nol soldiers were taken there?
After the regime collapsed in 1979, I knew what it was, but not during the regime. And in fact, it was not a pre-do-it. It actually had a number. It's called Office 204. It's called Dok Kontut, and there was a hill there. For those people who were sent there, maybe there would be only one or two who survived. The rest were killed, and the same thing as in Krang Tachan. And for those who were sent to fight at the front battlefield, there was hardly any survivors. And for example, at the village, those who survived only were those who actually knew how to build houses, for example, in the village.
You've just told us that you learned this after the regime fell in 1979. Can you tell us how you learned this information after the regime fell?
I was a commune chief from 1979 to 82. That is a Tapen commune. For those who were linked to the Khmer Rouge regime, were arrested, then they were educated at Koh Ondad. There was a prison there at Koh Ondad.
I'd like to turn now to the subject of killings at Krang Tachan. In your 2008 interview, which is E3/5153, page number 0017-2045 in Khmer, page 0020-5091 in English, and 0020-5096 in French. You say the following about killings at Krang Tachan. Quote, The killing site was about 100 meters from the prison. I was used to drag people who were nearly dead and people who had died of beatings to the killing site along with the Khmer Rouge cadres. At the killing site, I saw the prison guards hit people with bamboo clubs and hoes, and sometimes they cut their throats with palm frond stems. I saw them use swords to behead prisoners many times." End quote. Can you tell us who was it that ordered you to assist in dragging and burying those bodies?
There was a unit of militia there who used us to do it. And the person who was in charge there, named Dam, he's still alive today, but he's very elderly and fragile now. Not only Dam who executed the prisoners, but there were a group of them, there were about 20 of them who actually executed the prisoners and who dug pits to bury them.
And can you describe for us how these executions took place?
There were different ways of killing people there. Sometimes prisoners were killed immediately upon their arrival. I didn't know how they obtained the information. They executed those immediately. Let me give you one event. One day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a woman who was with about a 3-year-old child, and another one was young, maybe just newly born. And the woman could not walk because of bleeding. I could see blood stained on her skirt. She was accompanied by 2 guards with 2 guns at the detention office, and one messenger went to probably to meet his superior, and then he returned and he stated that they would not be detained, and then they walked the woman and the children to a location. First, they threw militia men walked, and then there were 2 more militia to go to a tamarind tree and a tnang tree to the north. They snatched the baby and hit the baby against the stem of the trunk of the tree. And the same thing they did to the 3-year-old child, and then they threw them into the pit, and the mother cried and became unconscious. At that time, they did not take people through a court like in this court. They just simply killed the people. I don't know, maybe they made a decision somewhere before that, and then only then those people were sent to be executed. I saw what happened, but I didn't know the reason why they killed the women. I just made my own analysis and came to that conclusion.
Are you able to estimate the number of people you saw killed during the time you were at Kreng Tachan?
Response. When I was detained at the center, I cannot make assumption. There was not there were not less than 50 victims executed a day. It's not only for the former Lone Nose official or soldier. The victims were also cadre from the Khmer Rouge themselves. There were more also. I know some of them who were from my village, who spent and served the movement since 1970. They were taken for execution in that prison, and the killing was more intense in 1975.
During your time at Kreng Taichen, do you remember whether there were any loudspeakers, and if so, what they were used for?
Response: yes, they would use loudspeaker very much. Early in the morning, when they play music on the loudspeaker, they use loudspeaker at 4 places. They play revolutionary songs, and the more sound you heard from the speakers, the more victim they kill, because they would use the voice from the loudspeaker to hide something. So when you hear loudspeaker or music on loudspeaker, there were many people killed during that time.
Are you able to remember the names of any of the Khmer Rouge cadres from your village whom you saw at Kreng Taichen?
Response: your question, do you mean that the prisoner at Kreng Taichen or those who work as a staff at Kreng Taichen?
Prisoners at Kreng Taichen.
Response: there were many of them, but all of them died. No one survived.
And are you today able to recall any of their names?
Response: yes, I remember some of their names. Prosecutor Suan from Takeo province, from the court, and then Sok Sao, commune chief of Samraung commune. After the liberation by the Khmer Rouge, and the Khmer Rouge took control in his province, and he left to the province. And Suan, who was a former military officer, and then the Khmer Rouge arrested him after the liberation, soon after the liberation. And other teenagers who were from Phnom Penh after the liberation by the Khmer Rouge on the 17th of April 1975. I know many of them, and I asked them, and they told me that they were sent to Champa Pagoda, and later they were sent to Kreng Taichen. I told them, why don't you lie them? And they said, no, they could not lie the Khmer Rouge. And one of the victims was taken, and the Khmer Rouge asked him, do you know among the 10 people? And that person said, yes, I know. And then they sent another person back into the group, and another one was taken for interrogation. and then they came and take the first member, and the Khmeru told him that you know from the second person that what you did in the old regime. So they keep rotating this method among the 10 people, and then they took all of them for execution.
Thank you, and I apologize again for interrupting you. It's just because we have a limited amount of time and a lot of information to cover. I'd like to ask you now about an incident of torture that you witnessed at Kreng Taichen. You described this in D2524 at page 0016, 3459 in Khmer, page 0022, 3456 in English, and page 0017, 8094 in French. And here is what you said. Quote,
Sorry.
Mr. President, hold on prosecution. Mr. Coupe, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, I know what the question is going to be. I should have objected already to the earlier question on the execution. There really is no point in reading this particular statement to the witness and then asking him to confirm. I know you will overrule it, but I make the objection anyway. The prosecutor should ask an open question as to events that he witnessed in relation to torture, not just read it to him and then he can say yes or no.
Mr. President, if I could respond. We've got an established practice in this trial. We understand that this is the defense objection, but there's no reason to vary from the practice that we've established of putting a witness's previous statements to him and asking him for additional information or clarification.
May I, for the exception, briefly respond? I remember also answering to the prosecution that there was a decision of the trial chamber in relation to a portray witness, that when it comes to a very specific contentious period of the testimony, that then the questions should be open rather than closed as they are now. That was a decision issued by Judge Cartwright at that time, which was protested by the prosecution. But there is limited to where it should be closed questions and where it should be open questions. So that, I do remember, is a ruling of your chamber.
The President, this is a question for clarification in addition to the statement. So the objection is not sustained, so the witness should reply to the question by the co-prosecutor. And prosecutor, could you reframe your question so that the witness can respond to your question correctly?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, I'm going to read you a portion of one of your interviews and then ask you a couple of questions about it. This is describing an event in Kreng Taichen, and this is what you said. Quote, "There were 3 women from Sraik Ambel who they tortured. They had them take off their shirts, and they used pincers to pull off their noses and earlobes. And they threw acid on them, poured water into them, and dragged them outside naked. They fried their livers. I saw that with my own eyes." End quote. Now, my question is, can you tell us where specifically in Krang Taichan prison this torture took place, and where you were, that you were able to observe it?
Response. Krang Taichan detention centers, the building was 4 by 20 meters long. Prisoners were shackled in a row. To the west, there was a small hut with the thatch wall. The prisoners were sitting on the ground, and the cadre was sitting on a coconut tree chair, and the prisoner were called to prison there to terrorize them, to tell them the truth when they are interrogated. So they did the torture to terrorize other prisoners. And the next morning, a prisoner were called to sit, and the woman was brought, one of them named Siet, was brought naked. She was from Tapram village. I forget her commune. From Trang district. Tapram village in Trang district. That lady joined the revolution long time ago. Since I was working in the hospital, the Khmer told that the 3 women was prepared for medical training, but finally they were sent to the salt farm, and about a year or so later they were brought to Krang Taichan, and the interrogator, one of them held a pincer, and another one holding a bottle of acid, maybe sulfuric acid, but I'm not quite sure. But they order that naked woman to sit on the ground, and then they use the pincer to torture her on her nose, her ear, and her cheek, and then squeeze, and also her lip. And she was bleeding on her nose and her lip and her ear. And then another interrogator using the sulfuric acid to pour on her, and she was screaming. And there were about 10 prisoners who were ordered to sit and watch the torture. And then another Khmer took water and pour on those prisoners who were in coma, and then one of them was becoming conscious, and the interrogator asked her, "Who led you to betray?" And the victim could not respond. And then they used the hook to hook her on her jaw, and then use the string to pull her up. And then they use a knife to cut her throat, to cut her chest. And then he took the liver together with heart and also gallbladder, and then they use the liver heart as a part of terrorizing people and to touch on our face and our head. And then they call another cadre, come here and take this to fry for us, and you should cut off the liver and keep it for me. We were ordered to sit and watch there until the next morning, and then the victim was in convulsion because her liver and heart was taken away from her chest. And in the morning, we were called to shackle in detention, and the president, now it is now appropriate time for lunch break, and from the 17th of April 1975, this is the scope for our hearing in case 002/02, and the chamber would like to advise the party that you should limit your line of questioning to the scope of hearing, otherwise you could not finish your questioning. So the court will be in recess for lunch break, and we will resume at 1:30. Court officer, please work with the vessel to facilitate the witness to have the room for his break, and bring him back before 1:30 this afternoon. And security personnel are instructed Mr. Kilsonpon to the holding cell downstairs and bring him back to the courtroom before 1:30. The court is in recess.